Go ahead and get started. Others can join the meeting as they arrive. Quick note, we are recording this meeting and it will be available on the City of Peoria's YouTube page. So good evening. Thank you everyone for attending. I'm happy to see you in the screen here. We are here tonight to discuss the housing needs assessment and community revitalization strategy for the Near Northside. This planning process for this draft plan that we have now initiated in 2018, and we had some activities in 2019. It is a partnership with the City of Peoria and the Illinois Housing Development Authority. That authority distributes a lot of the main authority that distributes state federal funds on housing. And we have some in attendance here to provide some information there. But IHDA, as we like to call them, has provided some technical and planning assistance to assemble and help us with this plan. And it culminates in some strategies and goals for the Near Northside. It also includes strategies for the East Bluff and the Near Southside. Tonight, we want to hear from you on the draft plan. We are hoping to focus on the mapping and data section and the goals and recommendations. The plan would be used as a guide for our policy makers, a guide on development and a guide on resources and where those would best be served in the Near North side. I know familiar with some of you, but my name is Carrie Lynn Wyke. I am a senior planner for the city. Online here we have Kaylee Dre, our neighborhood enhancement coordinator. She's in the background monitoring comments that might be coming in through the YouTube page. Online we have Emily Mueller from IHDA. She's the project manager on IHDA side, the assistant director for IHDA's department that has been providing this technical service. We have Megan Cuneo with IHDA, one of the IHDA's community planners. And I also see Alan Quick. He's IHDA's director for strategic planning and reporting. So I mentioned there were some activities in 2019. You may recall a survey having gone around, a community needs assessment survey. You also may have attended a meeting at Reachway Church. There was a Post-it note activity, a lot of good discussion there. All of that information is in our plan and informing the plan. There was also a third meeting or a second meeting in September where we shared some of the housing market information that's in the plan, and also shared several of the programs IDA has available for homeowners, homeowners to be, renters, local governments, housing developers. There's a whole section in the plan that identifies and summarizes those elements as well. So today we have a draft plan, and again, we're seeking comment at this time. The plan will serve again as a guide for policy and resources. It can also be a source of information for grant applications and private investment. There's a lot of information in here. There's also, as I mentioned, a whole plan that talks about funding sources for a wide range of users. So I'm just going to cover a couple ground rules for this meeting. We're going to ask you to mute your mic if you're not speaking so we don't get errant background noise. We're going to try to end around 7 in respect of everyone's time. And if you have a comment, we're going to try to use the raise your hand tool so I can call on you and we know who would like to speak. If you would like, there is a chat box in this venue, and you can type in comments there. We are going to try to get to those as time allows, kind of focusing on the raise your hand option. And then I mentioned Kaylee will have any comments that come in through the live stream of this meeting, and we'll add those in. So I'll turn it over now to Emily with IDA, and she'll give us a little background on the process of her involvement and help on this plan here.
All right, thank you, Carrie Lynn. It's nice to see some of you again. Carrie Lynn mentioned, my name is Emily Mueller. I'm the Assistant Director of the Community Revitalization Program. That is one of the 4 branches of IDA's Strategic Planning and Reporting Department. My apologies for those of you that were on Monday's meeting. I'm going to repeat some of the same spiel that I said then, but just to give a little overview of what our Community Revitalization Program is and its history. It officially started 4 years ago as a component of our low-income housing tax credit process. And that process, or as we call it, LIHTC, is the funding source that is the primary funding source across the country to create multifamily affordable housing units. And so we started to incentivize community revitalization or community planning in areas where people could demonstrate that they either had plans in place or that they were actively working on components of plans for community development within that competitive scoring process. And as a part of that, we started having 2 people, which soon grew to 3, offering technical assistance to both communities and affordable housing developers so that they fully understood the process and could connect with communities to really understand what their development goals were. And that was really what naturally transitioned into what we do today, which is our Community Revitalization Program, which is our proactive planning component, where we work with communities as well as affordable housing developers, although primarily communities across Illinois, and we provide free planning services. That can be one-off components where we just assist them in hosting community meetings, conducting a housing stock survey, et cetera. Or most often, communities would like the full gamut where we partner in a long-term partnership. We try to make these about 1 year, but especially with COVID complicating these things in the last year or so, they've been about a 2-year process with the ones that we've come to completion on. And this is where we really offer our free planning and technical assistance on any component that our partner, so the city or affordable housing developer, would like. That can be community engagement, housing stock surveys, data analyses, and then funding identification. And this all comes together in an overall plan, which is the draft plan that you see today with the city of Peoria. Much of those components were included in this partnership as well. So I'm happy to answer any more of those questions, or if people have specific questions about, the particular program itself or anything else related to IDA, please do raise it tonight.
I didn't mute myself, broke my own rule. Um, if there aren't any questions on Ida's background in or on this program, we can jump into content of the document, and we can kind of just start loosely if we'd like to. I see a lot of people waving, but I see Andy's got his hand up. We'll start with you, Andy.
Well, so just since you opened the door, as to the process, if we want to get into that first, or the plan process, I just want to find out from Ida, or as the director is on the line, maybe he can answer, is the rationale behind the plan is that the areas identified were closest to opportunity areas, which Ida defines outright as areas with low poverty, high access to jobs, and low concentrations of existing affordable rental housing. And in the report, it kind of says the exact opposite about these neighborhoods. In particular, the North Valley, where as part of the planning document in the report on page 14, it goes through the list of planning activities that are related to these areas that you have identified as the city for these revitalization plans. And there are none happening in the North Valley. So how do we justify, or how does Ida look at it in regards to putting together a plan, but not having any of the other items in place or being worked upon, so that we move forward on something that really isn't matching up with the definitions of the plan and the area as it stands today?
Yeah, so to clarify, Andy, it's in terms of opportunity areas, it's quite the opposite. What we consider community revitalization areas are ones that could qualify for those 10 points in the LIHTC process, are any ones that are not opportunity areas. And in terms of the specific neighborhoods or even cities that we partner with, those are completely chosen by the cities themselves. They come to us in seeking that technical assistance. And so IDA does not play a role in that process in identifying those communities. We don't have a strict rule that we don't work with communities that do qualify as opportunity areas, but we try not to, because our planning at the end of the day in the LIHTC process can provide the same incentive that an opportunity area can. So truly the two are somewhat unrelated. If anything, they're the opposite of one another. But in terms of the plans that you've referenced, a part of the process that we do, we ask communities that we're partnering with to provide past planning efforts. Recent is better, but historical is still acceptable. And that's really for IDA's benefit as we're trying to get to know a community. This helps to provide context for us of things that have been done, goals that were identified, or any findings that the community has already done, so that we are not contradicting them and that we're informed by them.
So if the last item is from 1992, that's acceptable to IDA as current data to be used to offer this community revitalization plan and incentivize developers for low-income housing tax credits?
No, I would say that in a dual response to your question. So if that was submitted to us as a submission for community revitalization in the LIHTC process, that would be too old for us to consider relevant. We do not consider any plans that are pre 10 years to whatever date we're reviewing it. If they do include those plans, they have to provide written or other documentation to show how that connection is still relevant. And so we require documentation that is current in order to be scored. In terms of how it applies to this plan, it's really just to inform us, to give us context, because most of us are not from the communities that were there. And we think it's just a best practice in terms of community planning. So it's really for our benefit.
If there's something current neighborhood planning, neighborhood activity that is going on that you think would fit well into that section and is relevant to include in that section, we would gladly accept that information and put it into that section right now. That is something that could be added into that section.
So, and this is maybe, and I'll be quiet so that other people can maybe offer input, or we can move on to the plan itself. But isn't that what the last 2 years was supposed to be, is IHDA and the city of Peoria identifying stakeholders, doing this, like finding out what is going on, doing the community needs assessment survey, and putting together a plan for us then to review as neighbors before it goes to planning and zoning and we reach this step? Or am I mistaken that this should have already been done, right? Like, and I offered 4 pages of comment signed off by 28 other neighbors. Will that be answered or reviewed or taken into account as part of this process?
Yes, I can say that Carrie Lynn shared that with IHDA and all of our staff working on the plan, and we did review that, check all of the references that you had questioned, and we appreciate that feedback. And as far as I'm aware, that was received prior to the plan going to any of the commissions. So it was open for public comment. So this is that process right now, as far as IHDA is concerned, but I'm not sure if that's the city's perception on it as well.
Yeah, we're in this process. We have the draft plan. If there's a strategy that you would like to see incorporated in any of the 3 areas, we can add that in. If there is an activity, a planning activity that I think a lot of what is listed are city plans in the past. And if there's something else, again, that fits into that section, now is the time to put it in there. It didn't come up in the surveys or in another meeting. So that's what we're doing now. And so right now it's fine tuning what we have written so far.
Well, and just for clarity's sake, this was introduced for review and acceptance by the Planning and Zoning Commission without comment. The reason we're having these meetings is because there was pushback from, and I can only speak for the North Valley and the neighbors that we have here, but we are asking, and we don't know the process, to be excluded from this project. And if that is something then that has to be taken to our council members, to the mayor, the city manager, whomever, that was asked and directly a request as part of the feedback from neighbors. And we haven't been advised as to that process to be removed from this assessment.
So just process-wise, the Planning and Zoning Commission is in itself a public meeting where they hear comments, can receive written comments. And so that's the current process we're in. We're hosting these specific meetings here outside of the commission, but both are public meetings. Comments here will be shared with the commission, as are your written comments that you sent in before. And that's all the process that we're in right now. So to me, I'm hearing when is this process happening? And my answer is it's happening right now. And in your written comment there, you included an ask for the north side to be removed. That will be what the commission can read and can consider in their recommendation to city council on the plan.
Does that hold any weight with IHDA, what the neighborhood is asking in this process? Or does IHDA only listen to the city when it comes to this?
No, it certainly does hold weight, and I appreciate your comments. I've read them multiple times, double checked the questions that you raised multiple times. But really, this is a partnership between us and the city, and even that said, there are other residents who have participated from even the Near Northside community beyond the people who are listed in that public comment. And so it certainly does hold weight, but I think that it's not a defined direction and what has to happen next. I think that has to be more of a universal conversation via these meetings, via our partner leads on, you know, the planning team, and then via the commissions and the city council.
May I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you. I must preface my remarks by saying that I have never felt as though some sort of subsidized housing has been very good for American cities. I think we've tried and tried and tried and tried, starting with things like Pruitt-Igoe and Cabrini Green and all those, you know, and even our own public housing, and the promise of public housing has turned out to be not very good. And I think we would, so I think to approach with a little skepticism, perhaps I can be forgiven. But I understand that this program is about affordable housing. We have 3 neighborhoods selected, all of which are depopulating, all of which have excess housing now. And one of which, when they filled out their citizen surveys, said that their greatest need was rehabs of existing housing. So the plan is, nevertheless, to offer tax credits and whatnot to build low rise, I suppose, or medium rise additional housing units, which will be subsidized, which will take, let's say we want to build 30 units. That will put 30 more existing units out of business. Not improving the neighborhood, but harming the neighborhood. Not just the neighborhood, but harming Peorians. Oftentimes these folks who set up these affordable housing situations are not local folks, although they can be, but oftentimes they're not. And when the tax credits run out, so do they. So I'm rather skeptical at the outset. We're going to be displacing housing that's already in surplus in these neighborhoods, and this housing is generally owned by Peorians. Sorry about that. Now, and my understanding is that IHDA does not have, not necessarily that I'd be all that crazy about it, but that IHDA doesn't really have a program for rehabbing existing housing and making existing housing better, rental housing. And I may be incorrect about that, and please correct me if I am. Peoria just passed at the city council level tax abatement on following a state statute, which is rather narrow. That state statute allows for tax abatement on brand new owner-occupied single-family homes, which I think is fine, but there is a bill in the legislature that would amend that statute and say that that tax abatement could be rendered to rehabs as well as brand new construction. Those kinds of programs do work very well across the country. And I would suggest perhaps that IDA might contact its legislative liaison people and say, you know, we ought to get behind that amendment. And that's going to help a lot of communities without any supervision by people who, God bless you, but you know, we can probably do this ourselves with good incentive systems. And so for those reasons, I'd like you to step back from this. First of all, we've got depopulating areas, we've got surplus housing, we don't have an affordable housing problem, we do need rehabs. And to me, this should be the direction that you are going in, and it seems that it is not the direction you're going in. Thank you.
Yeah, John, I want to answer 2 points to your question. One is really just very direct in terms of the rehabilitation of rental properties. The primary means that IDA does fund that is through the LIHTC process. And that is available as an option in LIHTC deals. It's not only new construction of units, it's also rehabilitation of units or a mix of the two. And then the other point that I really want to make is, you know, I hear and ask, which I believe is what you were asking, for IDA to step away from this process. But when we're coming and working with communities, we are not trying to dictate goals. In fact, Carrie Lynn would validate me, I'm sure, in saying that we do not even decide the goals for the community. We really push our community partners to do that because we feel that that's the only appropriate way. We say time and time again, the state does not want to plan for your communities. What we do want to do is offer the technical expertise and systems that we use to evaluate things as free resources for communities, and how they choose to apply them is entirely up to those communities themselves. And so I don't even feel that it is relevant for IDA to step away from, you know, the goals, because these are not goals that we decided. We offered the, you know, the legwork, the planning, and the insights or the metrics that we look at in our department and our agency as a resource or as a window to how, you know, data is viewed from our agency.
Well,
Yes, and
I appreciate that. I just would like you to imagine what this plan could do for Peoria. And I think you see low-rise or mid-rise brand new apartment buildings in these neighborhoods, specifically tailored for low-income people, even though the population need of these neighborhoods is middle-class people. Okay, but just for low-income people. And what are you going to do with all the surplus housing that will be, all the further surplus housing that is going to be done? Now, maybe somebody said this would be great. Maybe somebody said this would be wonderful. Okay, I don't mind people saying that, but let's really look at it. What do we really need? And how can IDA help us with what we really need? It seems as though if the number one need out of the survey in a neighborhood is rehabs, why aren't we talking about rehabs? Did the survey not mean anything?
Councilman Kelly,
Yes.
the first goal listed for this area is to prioritize rehabilitation for residential properties and
Yes.
public housing developments. So if we maybe want to turn this conversation to looking at those goals, another goal in that section is to address risk of displacement of current residents if there is new development that comes in. And those are themes that we heard throughout this planning process. So I just want to, I think, hit home with what Emily is saying is this is the goals page on here is what we heard at these meetings and surveys. And this document it's a high level document with themes and strategies supported by data that we can share for attracting investment, whether it's a single homeowner or someone who's planning to build multiple units. But it's not prescriptive. We're not at that. This document is not asking to be a prescriptive document right now. It's not going to say there should be a 30-unit building somewhere. We're not at that point, and that's not the intent of this plan. It's to give us some high-level strategies. And so we're hoping to hear, are we missing a strategy on here? From what I'm hearing is 2 of the goals hit home exactly with what you suggest a strategy is. So that's where we're at right now, and hoping to get some more feedback on are the goals and themes here accurate.
But the only reason we have this plan is to attract the low-income housing credit.
That is not true. The funding section is how many pages long, and there's one section in there that talks about the LIHTC program. So I'd encourage you to look over that. There's programs there specifically for homeowners to be. In fact, I guess now would be appropriate is the SMART, missing the term here, the SMART Buy program IHDA has. I don't know if Emily, you can elaborate on that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that there's a misconception that the only point of this planning process is to attract LIHTC developers. And that is just simply not the case. And I apologize for, that misconception. It is so integrally connected to that process because that is how it just naturally evolved. It naturally developed because through working in the LIHTC process, we saw that opportunity and that need, which is where this program was born. But truly, and you'll see this reflected in the scopes of work that we sign with communities, is to increase capacity, to connect to other resources, to build technical assistance. It is truly a planning process that aims to put tools in the hands of communities and let them have better access to all of the resources and data that we have, whether or not they choose to pursue tax credits. And as a part of that process, why we hosted one of those meetings to come and share about IHDA's other programs is to really just share that information to make it more accessible. Those handouts are included as an appendix, and I do appreciate Carrie's comment on Monday's meeting that one of them does need to be updated to reflect the most current information about the single family rehab program. So thank you for that catch, Carrie. But one of them that is not included because it's so new is what we call our Smart Buy program. And this is a down payment assistance program that IHDA oversees for people who are looking income qualified and buy within a certain price range. But for home buyers who would like to have assistance in purchasing a home, and it will also forgive their student loans up to a certain amount, up to, I believe, $40,000.
Those programs are only capable if we have a community revitalization plan?
Not even remotely. It's just something that we think is making all of those programs more accessible. As we travel the state, we hear that many people aren't fully aware. And so through this process, it can help to guide where those programs can be and just simply share awareness of them.
So the only thing that is contingent upon this plan being enacted by the city and with IHDA is to receive the additional points for the LIHTC program, as you said on Monday night.
No.
No other programs are contingent on it. This is LIHTC, the additional LIHTC points are the only thing that the acceptance of this plan offers that we don't have access to anyway.
No, and you would have access to those 10 points regardless of whether or not this plan was conducted. Any community can submit community revitalization and often do score the full 10 points, even though they have not gone through a planning process with us.
So on Monday night, you said something different. We can pull it like the benefit of this plan, the adoption of this, the community revitalization plan, as it's laid out in the document and the agreement between the city and IHDA, is to enable access to the LIHTC dollars for development, because that is one of the ways that a developer can get additional points, because the point system is very competitive. I think you said most plans are in the 60 to 70 point range. An additional 10 points because the city has gone through this process is a game changer. That is the reason we are going through this plan. Everything else in the plan is things that our community should be doing to engage residents, to help develop our city. Like, there is nothing else in this plan that isn't something that we as a community should be doing for all of our city. This is targeted so that when a developer goes in looking for the LIHTC money, they can score the additional points.
Yeah, so Andy, can I clarify?
Yeah.
You are correct in the sense that 10 points are guaranteed now with the plan being complete. It does not need to be adopted. It is available now. And that when we signed our scope of work with the city of Peoria, that was not even the policy. And so it was not and has never been the sole intention of the planning process. And I would be happy to share the intended outcomes of the scope of work with you so that you can see how vast they really are outside of the LIHTC process.
That would be awesome. And just sharing more information with the neighbors.
Sure.
Now, if I'm correct, it doesn't matter if we ask to be opted out. It no longer matters because we are already included, and in IDA's eyes, this plan is complete. This process is complete. Developers can apply for the LIHTC dollars in the North Valley or the South End or the East Bluff, regardless of public comment or input.
No, I would say that belongs in the hands of the city, who is our partner, who is the holder of this plan. And being that it's still, like, if the city says that we are not going to finalize this plan or that they have edits to make until then, as if we've noted, it is in draft form. It's not a final plan at this point.
Right. And I think we discussed at length in the East Bluff meeting, as the Peoria Opportunities Foundation did, this plan was not in place. They assembled parts to get the same points or use to provide the same application materials that this plan does for the LIHTC program. So there are two ways to submit for those additional points. Carrie, did you have a comment?
So we're talking about some data here and everything. So Emily said she's going to send this intended scope of work to Andy or something, but I just want to make sure that anybody who wants it would have access to that. And then in the document, it talks about so many of the properties in the North Valley were not identifiable. They didn't have the right classifications or whatever their mumbo jumbo is. I would like to request a copy from the city or IDA or whoever of the listing of all those properties that are actually included in, either the property ID number or whatever the classification, because I think that skews the narrative that's here because it doesn't accurately reflect all of the affordable housing that we already have in this area that is oversaturated and has been oversaturated and has gained more saturation as time has gone on. Would that be possible to get that spreadsheet or that data, Carrie Lynn?
It is a item that is available from the Peoria County Assessor. That is the source of that data.
So you're telling me that I need to go, you will not provide me as a citizen in this area that information. I have to go and ask Ma'am Shafley for all of that information? Or Ryan or whoever it is?
There's actually a accessible web map that it's public information, and it is a GIS map that you can actually click on the different parcels and will show that information.
So you're telling me that you don't have any kind of spreadsheet where you did any kind of an analysis?
We did. We downloaded it from that website.
Okay, but I don't necessarily have those same tools that I can download all that information, because the city has different access than I think citizens.
I'll talk to the assessor and he can send you some information.
Okay. And then Emily, you had talked about the change in the single family rehab. Where do we find information about that?
Sure. So there are 2 references to the single family rehab program within the plan. And let me find the exact page numbers for you. But the first one does reflect the most current information, which is that Peoria is not excluded from any jurisdiction that can apply. In prior rounds, Peoria was not excluded, as were any other municipalities that received CDBG or home fund dollars, but they changed, the department that administers that program changed that rule, and now the full state of Illinois can apply for it. The one change that does need to be made is in the appendix, where there is a listing of the different resources, and I'm pulling it up right now. So if you're looking at the current plan that we have, that is on page 242 on my plan. And that is in appendix. Let me find the number for you so you have it for reference. That is the appendix that is titled Accessing IHDA's Resources and Programs. And it is the footnote on the 3rd page. That is no longer relevant. That says the old rules. So I will have that corrected. But if you do want specific information, you can look at that spreadsheet, which also links to IHDA's website, which goes through all of the information about that program itself, or it is summarized earlier in the plan.
Page 196.
Thank you, Megan.
106?
Sorry, 196.
Is that a page number?
Yep, page 196.
Okay, so are there still any obstructions for the city of Peoria to take advantage of rehab programs? Since we do use the home program and the CDBG, so is that all gone, or has it been modified?
It is all gone. There is no obstruction anymore. The full state is available to apply for that program.
Thank you.
So even though it says single family rehabilitation, I did read that. Where is more information? Like, what is an application? Are you income eligible?
Sure.
What is that type of?
Sure. So there are links in this document to the website, but I know the website well. So if you go to IHDA's website, and that is IHDA.org, I'll actually put the link in the chat box once I finish explaining this to you. It's under the My Community tab. And then there's a link called Revitalization and Repair Programs, and all of the information is on there. And they can also put you on a mailing list to be updated about upcoming funding rounds, but I'll put the link in the chat.
Okay. And I just have one more question. So this process, Carrie, then when this document gets edited and before it's going to be sent to the Planning and Zoning Commission, you had mentioned that there was a meeting going to be upcoming, I think you said May 4th or May 6th. When is this edited document going to be able to be available for review again by the public?
Yes, I hear your comment. I just wanted to mention or follow up on the discussion that Emily just had. So I think one benefit of this plan is there's a whole section again on IHDA's programs that are now in a document that can be shared with anyone. This we didn't have before. And also IHDA came and attended a meeting through this planning process, and that's potentially another something that could happen again. They could come back and share their programs. So this is a partnership that again has many types of benefits from it that we've already seen back in September when they came once to share their programs. they've laid it out very clearly, I think, in this document, and can link back to their website. So that's something that we did not have before this plan. A comprehensive source of programs that IHDA has, that I think clarifies those items. Carrie's question on next steps. So again, this is not a final document. We've been discussing a couple changes that are going to be made. The schedule now is still to bring it to our commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission, on May 6th. The intent is to hold this meeting. We had a meeting on Monday. We'll have a meeting for the Southside on Thursday. With those comments and anything else that we receive in writing, which I haven't yet gotten anything else, we'll make our edits as fast as we can and get that back out to, again, the email list that we've been using on this. I'll put my email in here if you'd like to get a copy of what we distribute. You can ask me for that.
Can I ask a question real quick, just to get some clarification on the single family rehab? Is that specific, the city has to request that money, or can an individual homeowner? Back in the late 70s, myself and other people took advantage of some federal money. And that's probably one of the only reasons I'm able to stay in the home that I'm in. So is that something that the city will have a bunch of money and they decide who gets it, or how does that work?
Yeah, so for that program, either municipalities, so the city, or nonprofits can apply for funding. And what happens is they receive grants, and then they are the ones that administer it to homeowners. So it would either be the city or the administering nonprofit.
Okay, and they would just choose who would be able to get the money then based on some criteria.
Some criteria, of which I believe includes income qualification, and then there are other qualifications as well.
Okay. Because as a lot of people mentioned, we have a lot of homes that are beautiful older homes that really, really need just some walking in and taking care of. I'm looking at the people who are sitting here from the neighborhood, and myself and Carrie's moved into an old home, and Bill or Dad's, you should have seen the house when he moved into it. I mean, it's something that we are just, it's part of who we are, these beautiful old homes. And we have noticed that you've tried very much to integrate some homes into our neighborhood, but sometimes it's not done the best way. And we just want to make sure that we as a neighborhood get to have that ownership and the pride that we need. So, thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes. Carrie, did you have a comment, or maybe I left your hand?
Oh, sorry. You didn't take my hand out.
Oh, okay.
I'd just like to maybe continue on. There are, I'm sure, many programs out of IHDA, and I do not doubt for a moment the good intentions of the designers of these programs or administrators of these programs. I would, however, like to see how these programs have worked in other communities. And because I'm sorry, but I am skeptical. We've seen program after program after program after program over the last 60 or 70 years or 80 years that had wonderful intentions and lots of money. And all they did was keep people where they were. They enhanced the poor population. They trapped the poor population. Let's think about what we really need in here. And if we've got some programs that will address it, great. But just because we have a program does not mean it's good. And so if you're going to be recommending something, I would like to see how it has worked elsewhere. And then one final thing, Ms. Palmer spoke of her home and of Carrie's home and Bill's home and certainly many other homes. These are homes for middle-class people. I have nothing against the poor. And I want to help the poor. But one of the things you can do with a poor neighborhood is make it a mixed neighborhood, and that benefits everyone. And we have so many enticements to be poor that people take us up on it. And the middle class will be the salvation of these neighborhoods, and the poor will not be pushed out. These neighborhoods used to be, in my lifetime, primarily middle class, with some poor people and some wealthy people. But our public policies are directed toward, no, the only thing worthy of our interest here is poor people, and we're going to incentivize poor people, which ends up driving middle-class people out and causing lots of social problems, etc. You know, these neighborhoods on their own were mixed neighborhoods. And when we started to get smart about it, things went bad. So I would just like us to step back a little bit, have a little humility, and say, okay, what does this neighborhood truly need? And once again, I would urge Ida to speak, and I didn't give you a name before, but speak with Senator Kaler from Peoria about extending tax abatement to rehabs. That will do, I think, a great deal for these neighborhoods. Thank you again.
And just a comment, John, I don't know if you're aware that Dave Kaler used to be my neighbor, and he took a home that had been deserted for 20 years, and board by board rebuilt it up. But I will say, both Dave Kaler and myself at that time, we would be considered poor. So, you know, there's poor, and not everybody is, you know, I'm probably middle income now, but at that time I was not. I was definitely low income. So I think we do have to be careful about categorizing people in low income and middle income. So.
Yeah, on your first ask about some examples, I really loved the pages, page like 185, it starts. In the plan, there's some examples of different types of development that has been projects that have come through with IDA's programs. Some of them I've looked into a little further, just out of my own curiosity. Some of them I haven't gotten to. But again, we have this great document with a lot of information. People are asking questions, and they can go here, or they might find out where else to go because of this document. This is something we didn't have before. We certainly didn't have some of the time to be able to put something like this together without IDA's assistance and without IDA's housing background and knowledge that they've brought to the table in the preparation of this document. That is something that did not happen, that we did not have at the start of 2018, and now we have something that can serve multiple purposes and has a wide range of information to use in a lot of different ways, is kind of what I want to hit home. We have a couple questions here in the chat box from Mr. Ordaz. Um, let's see. Oh, okay. Kaylee, you responded to his question, but there was some question. Maybe if Mr. Rodez, you wanted to elaborate on how the Near Northside's National Historic District might play into new development or redevelopment. If you wanted to elaborate, that might be helpful.
No, I think it was answered in the checkbox there. I just wanted to see what how the property in the National Historic District would be treated in case of demolition. So, and it was answered. Thank you.
And just to clarify, I don't think I see anyone on the phone, but in case someone can't see the chat, the answer is that whether it's local funds or grant funds from IHDA or the federal government, the requirements to demolish a home in a National Historic District are the same. So there's those same, applications, the same process we have to go through, regardless of where the funding source comes from.
I have a question. I don't know how to raise my hand on Zoom. I asked Andy. I can't figure it out.
No, that's fine.
So here's the real life hand. Thanks for hearing us out. My name's Seth. I'm a resident of the North Valley. I also pastor in the neighborhood. And so I always have that bend to want to advocate for neighbors who aren't on the calls and in the rooms and things like that. So my question would be for either anyone on the call from IHDA or the city of Peoria. I followed the link that Emily sent about revitalization and repair programs. Something that I think I'm interested in kind of in the present moment is what's available for rehabilitation assistance or incentives at this moment in time. I clicked on several of the links and it looks like application windows have been closed or they're not open yet or something like that, which is cool because there might be things on the city level as well. I just know as a church, every door that we knock on, every neighbor that we meet, we want to be able to have relevant information so that we can advocate for them. So when it comes to, that was a little nuance, but when it comes to opportunities that are available on April 7th, 2021 for North Valley residents, either at an IHDA level, City of Peoria level, what are those, or where is there more information on those?
Sure. So Seth, what you've outlined is my dream, and it's not only my dream, it was a dream that we have with this community revitalization program. I mentioned this slightly at our meeting on Monday, but when we first started building this program, we also had this component or just piece of it that we dreamed about called the Technical Assistance Network. And that was both a network of people and agencies, but also resources, because there are so many things out there, but it's really hard to aggregate it, or there are so few resources to aggregate and get real-time data. And the answer is we try to be one step closer to giving this data via this program and via this relationship, in the sense that any of you can call me or Megan or Alan any day, and we'll tell you, we'll look up those questions for you. We don't have an online source right now that says today this is what application is open at IHDA. It's not off the table. It's actually something that we're still working towards. I would love like a map or a timeline that shows what's available, what you could apply for. But I'll tell you right now, some things that could help. Getting on those mailing lists. And one of the very easy ones to get on is, I believe, I'll double check it for you, but I believe it's Community Affairs with plural at IHDA.org, because they do have a mailing list for all of their grant programs. That includes all of the revitalization programs and the rehab programs for single families. And then the other one is truly just to call us. We answer those calls all the time. And if we don't know which program is currently open, we'll direct you to the person who can answer that question. And so as of today, I am not aware of programs that are currently open at IHDA. That's not to say there aren't any. Ones that are constantly rolling are those home ownership programs. But speaking to the revitalization and repair programs, those generally roll on a 1-year basis. So they open applications, not strictly on January 1st or anything, but they are pretty consistent with having one application funding round per year. And revitalization for single family homes, and sometimes up to 4-unit homes, is most commonly done through that single family rehab or home accessibility program. But one other outlet I do want to mention is the abandoned property program. Those funds actually can be used for rehabilitation, but only on vacant and abandoned homes, not on currently occupied homes. So if a city received those funds, they could put them towards rehabilitating vacant homes. It's not something that's commonly done because it is so expensive to do, but it is an applicable use of the funds.
Thank you.
Is that program available if City Hall or the county does not yet own that property?
For the abandoned property program, it really is up to local laws. So as long as that is acceptable and legal by your local laws, the city does not need to own it to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Kaylee or Carrie Lynn, do either of you happen to know off the top of your head if there's anything happening City of Peoria as far as how we can assist renters and homeowners with rehabilitation? So like very practically speaking for me, like I've got about 5 guys at the church who would just love to help folks out with their homes. I'm wondering just how we can get them plugged in, how we can get some funding behind their efforts. And what that looks like is that's like my narrow scope of the neighborhood. So I will always be interested in stuff like that as well. So
Seth, if you want to maybe email me or share with me your email, I can ask around and plug you in to the some groups I'm thinking of. Oh yeah, Kaylee just put in Catherine Murphy is our grants administrator, and she's probably one person that I'm going to go and talk to and get you on her radar for that. Yes. Yeah, I got your email. Thanks. Okay, so are there any last comments for this evening?
Yeah, I just want to make one last comment, and part of it is, forgive me, it's a little bit of taking the issue with the way that this has been presented and the way this has been handled with the city. This is not a fault of IHDA, but in everything I read from the IHDA websites, it is supposed to be about empowering the community, underrepresented residents being empowered and getting local buy-in in order to find a successful program and in order to have success in a community. According to Carrie Lynn, there are no residents of the North Valley that were stakeholders, nor were they invited to any of the private stakeholder meetings. I don't know about the South End, but it bothers me that there was only 2 public meetings, one in the neighborhood and one at the library to cover the whole city, and that there were no opportunities until we actually, put up a fight against this and went to the powers that be to get even this meeting scheduled. And as an underrepresented person in this region, in this neighborhood, and having been known in the community, along with all the people on this call, Carrie, Bill, Pat, Tim's not on camera, but Seth, that none of us is considered a stakeholder or relevant to helping put together this plan along the way over the last 2.5 years is shameful. And as representatives of IHDA, you should know that the residents of this community are trying to do stuff. We are doing redevelopment on our own. I, along with many of the other people on this call, as Pat pointed out, have invested in homes down here to fix them up and are active in our community. And yet not a single one of us was invited to the private stakeholder meetings, nor brought up to speed until a 246-page document is dropped on the Planning and Zoning Commission. There was never an email sent prior until I saw it on a meeting and engaged over 30 other neighbors who signed on to a letter or who are in agreement that we are not being heard by the city. And if IHDA's goal is to help underserved communities build capacity and power, then you do that by telling the city, this isn't how you do this plan. This isn't how it should be enacted. This isn't how it should be brought forward to IHDA. And it shouldn't be that we as residents are the bad guys, or that we are not for making our neighborhood a better place, because I'm fully vested in making my neighborhood a better place. And what the message being sent by the city and IHDA, by still not answering the question, how do we get removed from this as neighbors and residents? Because all of the things that you talked about this evening are achievable if the city wants to focus on a neighborhood or doing community development. It does not require the implementation of this revitalization plan into our long-term comprehensive strategy at the city level. And that is what we should focus on, is working with neighbors, caring about, we are all privileged right here. I'm dialed into this phone call. I've got 3 neighbors up the street that I've been talking with about this who don't have computers, who are working 2 and 3 jobs and can't dial into this, that they have never been invited to sit down as a stakeholder, except for when neighbors like Carrie Alms walk the neighborhood for the city to do that initial community needs assessment survey. And not a single one of us was ever followed up for the work that we did to help make this plan supposedly better. So it's a shame. I will continue to ask and push for us to be removed, because everything that you've talked about in terms of the rehabilitation, the home ownership, all of that is available without implementing this plan. And that is the things that our community, our city staff should be working on, regardless of the partnership with IHDA. And as the partnership with IHDA goes forward with the South End and the East Bluff, all of that is data that should be available to everyone. When Carrie Alms asked about getting the data set that you used, it shouldn't be to tell us to go find it ourselves, but it should be sharing that information. So I want the folks at IHDA to understand that there is people in the North Valley doing revitalization. We were not engaged as stakeholders per your own documents, per the state of Illinois saying that this is how the best practices should be, and you've not followed it, and that IHDA would go along with this, or that you believe that residents have been allowed input into this throughout the last 2.5 years. It's just not true. When you have a public meeting, and Emily, you were there at the library, most of it was focused on the programs that you offered. There was not an opportunity to look at any kind of draft plan or any other data. When we met at Reachway, it was doing Post-it notes about things to continue and not continue, but never a presentation of any sort about a plan or what else we could be doing. As a Latino, nothing has been published in Spanish. We're in the North Valley, we do have more Hispanic residents, and no one has gone in to talk to some of the business owners. Again, Part of IDA's revitalization strategy says that community businesses should also be brought in. I own a business, Mr. Eunice owns a business, the Vegas own a business. These are, we've got plenty. That not a single one of them was reached out to as part of this process. So I make this with the news being online, with IDA being here, with the council member. Please remove us from this plan. And if you want to actually make a revitalization plan and help us in the community, come and be engaged with us. Kaylee, I appreciate coming to the last couple meetings and engaging with us, but it's been to finally kind of hear from us or see what we're doing, but it's never been in regards to this plan. There is, Carrie Lynn, you have never come to the neighborhood to present this plan, or, I know some of the authors or the names listed on this plan haven't been with the city for over a year. So the fact that if it goes back to garbage in, garbage out. And if that's what IDA is willing to accept, then there's bigger problems in our state, because this is not being handled correctly at the city level. And I would ask for your help to help change this and how the city of Peoria is doing it, because the way they're doing it today is not helpful. Thank you.
Andy, thank you for those comments and points in the planning process. Pastor Johnson, I think I saw your hand up. Maybe you took it down. Wanted to make sure you had a chance.
Sure. No, Andy said it all. Also being a pastor in the Averyville neighborhood, and also purchased the former Kingman School. And we're very active in the community and also advocate for a lot of the residents. I was only informed about this particular call from Dr. Ali, had told me, hey, she had inquired, had I known anything about the collaboration. And I'm very active in the community and also with the city. So I was deeply disappointed for a plan to be brought forth. It reminded me when I was in the East Bluff here about 6 years ago. It was the same thing. It was East Bluff Revitalization Program. And I was identified as a community stakeholder. But when the plan actually rolled out, there was no collaboration. And unfortunately, here we go again. So I hope we take the comments that Andy and some of the others have said. And if we are going to revitalize and make it better, we get the input of the community to do it together. So thanks for allowing me to share.
Yes, Carrie.
Yeah, so I'm like a data-driven person and an analytic type person. So when I read in the plan, I know Emily had said on the call on Monday night that you can't get this perfect match, but when you're using census tract data from census tract number 12, and the target area is from the middle of Spalding to Wayne Street, and the census tract data is from Wayne Street all the way to William Comp, and you say that like the median price of a house in that area is $200,000, we all just like look at you and just go, whoa, where did that come from? Because I'd like you to provide me just one house from Spalding to Wayne Street that's in the target area that's selling for $200,000. You'll never find it. So when you have data that is inaccurate and you haven't had stakeholder participation And you have these meetings that Andy was saying, and Pastor Johnson is very active up in Averyville and has no idea. It's not, it's despicable really, because, you know, Pat's been down here longer than I have. Bill and Tim have been down here for a long time. I'm coming up on 27 years. It's not like you don't know who the stakeholders are in the North Valley. I'm not going to speak for everything else, but East Bluff and Southside, we know who those people are. When we're not invited to the table, your tent is about this big, and it feels like you're a mark being checked off, a box checked off. We listen to those people, whatever, let's just go on. And when you can't tell me or tell all of us when that plan is going to be available before the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, you again marginalize us and say, hey, we're going to get it to you as fast as we can. We don't know where that is. We're going to get you as fast as we can. And you can't answer these questions. We've been in this trench a long time, seen a lot of plans, seen a lot of dialogue, seen very little conclusion until we fight and scrap our way too. And so it doesn't give us any good rosy feelings about anything that you're doing, because it's just more of the same. And it's very frustrating.
Thanks, Carrie, for speaking on that. Last call for this evening.
Just one thing, Carrie Lynn, Emily, and Kaylee, I just want to thank you. You've got very thick skin, and I appreciate that. I know sometimes these things are difficult, but I hope we've been respectful, and please help us out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, everyone, again, if you're not on, if you weren't on the email list that went out, or maybe you just want to make sure, if you put your email in the box or email me, we'll make sure that you are included in any correspondence moving forward on this planning process. Thanks for attending, making your hour plus available for this afternoon, and I hope everyone has a good rest of the evening.
Thank you.